Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach, and I've got to say a couple things. Number one, I always kind of knew I was going to do this video, and I was dreading it because it felt like a chore, but I'm actually excited because I figured out the way to watch Avengers Infinity War and enjoy it. And it's a little weird, it's a little wacky, but basically, this is what you have to do. You watch it like 2 minutes at a time over the entire day. And that's the secret. Avengers Infinity War came out like a year ago, and everyone on the planet saw it. And from what I can tell, just by every single time I've mentioned it to anyone, everyone's reaction is the same. Yeah, it's okay, I guess. You know, superhero movies in general tend to have very strong reactions one way or the other, but this is the most, I mean, it wasn't negative, it wasn't positive. People saw it, and everyone, even the people who are on the negative side of meh, are still like, yeah, I'm going to see the next one. Oh, no, actually, I've had a good amount of people just be like, I'm fine, I'm fine. So I didn't enjoy it when I saw it. I saw it in theaters with my son, and I kept zoning out. Like, do you ever just get so bored you start looking at parts of the theater? It's like, huh, I wonder if these little lights on the walkway next to the aisle, if that's like a law or if it's like a corporate policy or it's like franchisee discretion. I was bored and annoyed. And I also think I went, you know that line in Scott Pilgrim where he says, I'm going to go pee out of boredom? I think I went to the bathroom like 2 or 3 times because there was like 3 scenes when I just watched it today on Netflix that I have no memory of seeing. They're actually pretty good. So uh, it really killed my enthusiasm to see Endgame. And if you remember, the shtick with Avengers is that Avengers 3 and 4 were going to be filmed around the same time and then released a year away from each other. I believe this was invented by Back to the Future 2 and 3, and then the Lord of the Rings movies did it, and then the Hobbit movies did it. Are there any other movies that did we're going to film them all at once and then release them 1 year apart from each other? I can't. I think the early parts of the Justice League, they were going to do that, but it just became one crappy movie just to get over with. But anyway, so I saw it in the theater. I kept saying over the past year, I can remember like 5 minutes of that movie. And the stuff I always remembered was Tony and Pepper at the park, and he's babbling, and he's not funny. I remember that and like a couple of other snippets. So anyway, it came on to Netflix. Netflix is still getting Marvel movies. Supposedly, they're all going to go to the Disney Premium service, and when that happens, I'm never going to see a Marvel again because I'm not getting a third premium service. But it's just been sitting there. It's been going in and out of my queue, and I just always sigh. I sigh a lot. And the picture is just like that washed out Patrick H. Willems. He's done a really good video about like why are Marvel movies so bland. I don't know why they are, but they are. In fact, by coincidence, two of my favorite Marvel movies are the ones that are the brightest, which is Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. But anyway, so I watched this, and it literally took me like 12 hours, and I watched it about 1 to 2 minutes at a time. And I gotta say, the beginning was just as excruciating as I remember it being. It was nothing but Marvel formula. Every 20 seconds, a joke, and just horrible, horrible jokes. I mean, there's one, the Hulk, he gets sent through a Bifrost tunnel, whatever you call it, into the Sanctum Sanctorum, and they got Tony there, and they got Wong, and they got somebody else. Well, Doctor Strange, I feel like there's a fourth person. Oh, yeah, duh. Banner. And they're all talking and they're sharing what they know about Thanos and the time or the soul gem or what all this stuff. And then all of a sudden they just start doing these jokes. It's I forget the setup. Doctor Strange says I wasn't prepared for this, and then Tony Stark says like, I wasn't prepared, or no, he said I gave up dairy, and then Ben and Jerry's made a ice cream named after me, and then Wong's like, I like Hulka Hunka burning fudge. I was like, excuse me, hi. You guys were just talking about the end of the universe, and it was actually really dramatic, and I was getting invested, and now you're doing these grade Z 2.5 Men Modern Family trash sitcom jokes. And for like the first 30 minutes, it's just that, and it's terrible. The only things I really liked in the New York sequences were, and it's really, really small stuff. Because one of the things that pretty much everyone says about Infinity War is the problem with Infinity War is everyone's a superhero. Like everyone. There's no one who isn't a superhero. I was like, oh, Pepper Potts. Well, she had the freaking extremists in her in Iron Man 3, So she was briefly a superhero. Everyone's a superhero. They didn't even have like Happy Hogan. They had Fury and what's her name at the end of credits sequence, but that was it. And technically Fury's a superhero. I don't know. A SHIELD agent isn't like a regular person. Like there was no Aunt May. There was no any supporting cast of anything. It was just all superheroes. But there's a point when they're getting invaded for the second time, and Tony's had a lot of PTSD over, especially when he went into space. And that's one of the things I've liked about the Marvel movies. I'm pretty harsh on them, but Tony having like emotional reactions to things and not just bluffing everything off, I really like that. So it's happening again. He goes out in the street, and a woman falls down. An extra, or probably a stunt woman, trips, and he just stops and he helps her up. And then a car hits a light pole right next to him and almost runs him over. And then he turns to, I think, Wong and Banner, and he gestures to the driver and he says, help him out. And that to me was one of the best parts of the entire movie. It's like, oh, yeah, these people are heroes, and there's normal people in the world. Now, the normal people didn't get any lines, but they existed, and Tony acknowledged them, and he was cared for them. And I was like, then we get some poorly done CGI characters. I was doing a bit at the beginning where I said, just watch it 2 minutes at a time. I have ADHD, so I do weird things like that. The point is to skip all of the scenes in New York, all of the scenes on Earth, and you have a couple of landmarks, a couple of guiding stars. If Thor is in the scene, it's a good scene. If Thanos is in the scene, it's a good scene. If Gamora is in the scene, it's a good scene. And that's it. Because the secret about Avengers Infinity War is that it shouldn't have been an Avengers movie. What they should have done is had a sequel to both Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Thor Ragnarok that was called As Guardians of the Galaxy. No, I'm not a witty person. I did not make up that term. Marvel corporate marketing made that, and they made an okay-ish, not so very good comic named As Guardians of the Galaxy. It should have been called that, because everything good is the space stuff. Thanos, he's a space guy. Yeah, they might have needed to have one or two. You could have gotten Vision with the Soul Gem, Doctor Strange into space. And then you cut out all the trash because, most obvious thing to say in the world, there were way too many characters in this. And it was way too much of either people not getting anything really to do or just doing weird mix and matches. I could do a whole video on the weird, nerdy stuff. It's like, well, why did this happen on this? But when the Vision gets rescued by the 3 lowest powered Avengers, that's just dumb. Okay, so I could do a whole nother video just talking about weird nerd stuff about that. But the thing about this movie is, now it's kind of a trick question because, yes, it's a director team, but these movies are not, they're not auteur theory. There was a woman, she was going to direct, I believe, a Black Widow movie. And then she quit during the interview process. And she said, basically, she had done some, I believe, some dramas and maybe a horror movie, and they said, and she confessed to, hey, I haven't done a lot of action, and they said, don't worry, we have people that do that, and yes, they do have people that do it. It's the special effects coordinators, and it's the stunt coordinators, and it's the 3D animators. So every single action scene from pretty much every single Marvel movie looks exactly the same. And I got to tell you, except for some bits at the end, almost every action scene in the first 2/3 is absolute trash. And in fact, one of them, I was like, okay, use your brain, figure out why this is so bad. So what I started doing is I started tapping my finger. Just, kind of counting time like you would do with your foot if you were in band or something like that. And I noticed something. In the action sequences, there's basically a cut every 2 taps, which I guess would probably be like 1 second. And so it lulls you. One of the things I always bring up about Michael Bay is quick cuts, quick cuts. Yes, he does do quick cuts, but he does a variety of types of quick cuts. Sometimes there'll be one every, they'll kind of get more frantic and quicker as things are picking up and you're getting more excited. But this was literally like some kind of computer program. 2 beats for every shot, 2 beats, 2 beats. I guess it's like 1 beat for your brain to like recognize it's a new shot, and then another beat for the thing to happen. Whatever, Black Widow grabs a spear, next one, spear's flying through the air, next one, spear goes into someone's chest, just an example. But the scenes were just awful. And then they had that terrible trash Marvel formula humor. So then, like 30, 40 minutes in, all of a sudden we cut to the Guardians of the Galaxy. And it gets better. It gets a lot better. Now, they're still doing some kind of painful Marvel trash humor, but they're doing less of it. And they're with, guys like Chris, Pratt, who's really good at comedic timing. So, and then, Bradley Cooper doing the voice of Rocket. That's good. Now, there are really stupid things like Thor calling Rocket a rabbit. It's not funny the first time. It's definitely not funny the 5th time. But there were actually some bits that kind of made me laugh. At one point, they got the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Quill says, "Where is Gamora?" And Iron Man says, "I'll do you one better. Who is Gamora?" And then Drax says, "I'll do you both one better. Why is Gamora?" It actually made me laugh. It was actually funny. It was escalation. It had a little twist because you kind of forgot that Drax was I think he was stuck on the ground. Somebody had their foot on him, something like that. Maybe it was Iron Man. But it was good. It was funny. There's also a good line later where you find out that they've met Thor already. So Chris Pratt, who's kind of embarrassed because Thor kind of got the attention of his whole crew, he goes, "Yeah, I know him. Tall, not very good looking, had to be rescued." It was an okay line. Actually, it was a fairly good line, delivered with really good comedic timing. And I know Robert Downey Jr. gets so many accolades for his comedic timing, and he is good, but they give him the most trash lines to pull off, and it's just embarrassing. So, that being said, almost all the Tony Stark stuff in this movie is excruciating. The Peter Parker stuff is excruciating. That whole... this little sidebar. Iron Man just needs to become a wizard. At one point, one of his little silly Billy lines is, he says to Peter or Banner, he says, "You're embarrassing me in front of the wizards," which is Wong and Doctor Strange. The thing is, Iron Man is more of a wizard than Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange's spells have limits and they have rules. Whereas this new armor, I'm not even going to call it armor. It's a freaking magic spell. We're introduced to not an arc reactor, but apparently just something he wears on his chest. I don't know if it's screwed into his ribs or something. But he tells Pepper, it's not an arc reactor. It's just a little housing for some nanites in case we have any problems. And then what happens? What happens? He goes into the armor, and you think maybe it's going to be remember in Iron Man 2 where he got ambushed at the racetrack, and even though Whiplash went there to ambush him, even though he was just a last minute addition to be on the right, whatever. He had an armor, and it was basically like what I'll call like a temp armor or a portable armor, and it was pretty cool. But you could tell from the beginning it was flimsier, which kind of made it more interesting because it wasn't like the full strength armor. This he has armor. It's ridiculous. It does everything. First of all, he's got this little saucer, hockey puck sized container for the nanites, and then it does an entire suit. But then we see the suit can also grow missiles out of it and then shoot missiles. At one point, there's these giant like subwoofer things that are whatever his little blasters. So it like augments him with like six more. They just pop out of his back like magic. Later on, he's fighting Thanos, and Thanos punches him in the helmet, and then the whole helmet just disappears. But his face is fine, like one little bruise on his like. It's just it, and he does it like the whole time. He magically gives Peter Parker and the Iron Spider, but like how the Iron Spider in the comics had the legs out all the time. Well, no, they're not there, but they suddenly pop out these 9 foot long legs. Just oh, so annoying. So anyway, but the Thor stuff is good, and there was actually a really good Thor scene where they're doing some of the Taika Waititi, Ragnarok director. They're doing some of his LOL so random humor, but there's a good scene where Thor's talking to Rocket, and they're just running down all the people he's lost, and it's everyone. There's some really good acting by Chris Hemsworth. I got into that. I liked the Forge scene since I missed that setup because I was in the bathroom or whatever, and I came back, and then they were there with I think it's Ulick the Troll, played by Game of Thrones guy, and that one was kind of better to me. It still doesn't make sense that Thor had to stand in the aperture, and I still think they're kind of all over the place with how strong he is. And they always do that with super strength in movies. I especially noticed in the first Hellboy movie, but in this one, Hulk meets Thanos and they fight, and Thanos is absolutely just destroying him. But then Thanos has to lift Hulk onto his shoulders, and he like bends at the knee and does a proper lift. I'm like, no, Hulk weighs like 1 or 2 tons, but if you fight him, that means you can easily lift 100 tons. Putting Hulk onto your back would be like, putting a loaf of bread on top of your shoulder. Like, he should have just thrown him up there. But I understand, mass and momentum and all that type of stuff. Or inertia, I mean. Yeah, so the trick is to, and I'm one of those people who has to watch every single second of a movie when I'm watching it at home. If I miss one line of dialogue, I'm going to rewind and watch it again. New York City scenes, just skip them. Tony Stark, fast forward until it's not Tony Stark. Although I will say, the last 30 minutes, not the Wakanda stuff. Oh my gosh. Okay, so New York and Wakanda scenes, just skip them entirely. A space scene with, you know what? Honestly, yeah, all of the ship scenes with Tony Stark, skip those. When they get down to, I think they're on Titan at the end, and there's some good acting there, some annoying, just generic stuff, but there's some good stuff. I really like that when the deaths are there, there's no music, it's just silence. By the way, what is with the score? Like, there was like no score to this movie at all. There was a couple little beats where they would do like the Avengers theme. Just reminded me, everyone wants to copy Star Wars. Star Wars movies have really good bombastic scores. You need it for this stuff like that. I've already talked in other videos about my problems with the Marvel Studios movies, how everything looks like what it is. Everything is designed basically by Andy Park. So no matter what planet you are, no matter what race or species, everything looks like it was designed by the same guy because it is. Patrick H. Willems has talked about how bland the cinematography is. Man, there was one establishing shot. It was the Guardians of the Galaxy ship on some planet, and it was color timed to death so much that everything was almost the same color, and you could almost barely even tell there was a spaceship in the midground. It was bad. So the things that are fantastic: Thanos, Oh my gosh, Thanos feels like he's in a completely different movie than those trash Wakanda and New York City scenes. He has gravitas, he has humor, he has humanity or titanity. I guess that's what you call his race. But he, you can understand it. He has actual emotions. They do something great. You always imagine these guys with some like great grumbly voice, but he's very soft spoken. He's highly intelligent. He has a plan. He has a goal, and you can understand his goal. There's a great scene where he explains what happens. With Gamora's planet. They're overpopulated. There was scarcity. People were starving, and I think it was Gamora's planet. And then he killed half of them, and he goes, "Nobody's hungry. Everyone's good." And then, of course she puts, yeah, he killed you. They still remember it. The Gamora scenes are excellent. There's the funny thing is that, like, when they get away from the stupid formula stuff, there's like this really great scene where there's a torture chamber with a Nebula, and you walk in and it just looks like she's hanging from the ceiling, and then the camera kind of tracks around, and you see she's been disassembled. It's just a scene with her and Gamora and Thanos, and God, every line Thanos says is perfect. Gamora is amazing, and then they have that great scene with the Red Skull, and he's guarding the Soul Stone. And it turns out that is not Agent Smith from the Matrix. Apparently, he doesn't want anything to do with Marvel movies, so they got someone who could impersonate him fairly well. Although now that I know it's not him, it's kind of obvious it's not him. But I thought it was him the first time. That scene is great. It's like really spooky. These scenes where he like gets power and he kind of goes into this dream world. There's two of those. Those are just excellent. So this movie is 2.5 hours. It took me a whole day to watch it, 2 minutes at a time. There is a really fantastic 90-minute movie in there. I've always said that Captain America Civil War was not a Captain America movie. It was more of an Iron Man movie than it was a Captain America movie. But what Captain America Civil War was, it was Avengers 3. It was a smaller scale than Avengers 1 and 2. But it was good, and it's absolutely an Avengers movie. It's not a Captain America movie. He's a lead, but it's not his movie. This book, or this movie, I mean, yeah, it was an Avengers movie. Well, I don't know. Yeah, Thor's an Avenger. But Nebula and Gamora aren't. But it shouldn't have been an Avengers movie. It should have been as Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a lead story where you get Doctor Strange, Thor, Hulk, and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's most of it. And then you could have done almost everything else. You just have a scene at the beginning where those two weirdos who went to steal the Soul Stone from Vision were successful, and then it's up in space. They're all trying to get to wherever planet, and then, oh my gosh, that would have been amazing. Now, that being said, the movie was well reviewed. A couple billion people saw it. It made so much money, and obviously, it's for everything that it was meant to be. It was successful. This is how to make it successful to me, who already saw it, and I was poo-pooing. Oh, I'm not going to see Endgame. I'm going to see it. Everyone's going to see it. All the people who said they aren't going to see it, you're going to see it. Quit playing. But anyway, thanks for watching. So just to reiterate, I know I did a little bit where I said watch it 2 minutes at a time. The trick is to make your own little edit. New York scenes and Wakanda scenes, skip. Basically all of the Earth scenes, skip them. A space scene with anything in a spaceship with Tony Stark and Spider-Man, skip that. Thor scenes, all good. Gamora scenes, all good. All the Thanos scenes, good. Peter Quill, they got some lame jokes in there, but that stuff's good. I liked it that Chris Pratt put on weight, and they brought it up like really quickly. So just as soon as you're like does Chris Pratt a lot bigger? They're commenting on it, and there's actually some fairly good humor. Chris Pratt is just really really good at humor and acting. There's some really good touching scenes with him and Gamora, and first he lives up to his promise, and then he kind of screws things up. I think they really sold the love story between them quite well. So good stuff, good stuff. There's some really good stuff in this movie. It absolutely did not need to be 2.5 hours. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's for the amount of money they spend. I mean, you spend like an extra 100 million to a more toned down as Guardians of the Galaxy. Just call it Avengers 3 as Guardians of the Galaxy. Then you work in a couple of the Avengers. People understand you don't have to. I mean, they had like 2 lines of dialogue to explain why Ant-Man and Hawkeye weren't in it. I mean, you throw in another 3 to explain why Black Widow and Hulk aren't in it, or Black Widow and War Machine aren't in it. Oh my gosh. Like I said, I'm not going to get into all the little nerd complaints, but one thing I laughed so hard on, uh, so hard, I laughed so hard at, is at the end, like they're all rushing Thanos, and then Falcon rushes up with his little Mac 10s that he never reloads. And I don't even know what happened, but it looks like Thanos just waves his hands, and Falcon's wings collapse, and then he just hits the ground. And he just lays there. It didn't even look like a hard hit. It looks like he was already decelerating. It's like, yeah, you're useless. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll have a new video up tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.